We all know the Clone Wars pushes the limits as a kid's show, but there are some episodes that are really dark. From showing war crimes, gore, slavery, genocide, and human sacrifice, and much more that we'll get into later. Because we're going through the 10 darkest episodes of the show, with the episodes getting more disturbing as the video goes on. The last episodes are rough. Let's start with number 10, Revenge. Whenever the episode starts with the red Clone Wars icon, you know stuff's about to go down. We start out with Savage Opress taking Maul to Dathomir. Maul clearly needs help. He's legitimately lost his mind, and Savage knows it. So they go to Mother Talzin, who performs a creepy ritual that brings Maul back to his right mind. Naturally, the first thing he thinks of is Obi-Wan. This is where we start to see the truly evil, twisted side of Darth Maul. He decides that the only way to get the Jedi's attention is to kill innocent people. So they fly to a nearby planet and land at this village. A bunch of happy, excited kids come out to greet Maul and Savage, thinking they brought supplies for them. They couldn't have been more wrong. While it's not shown on screen, it's clearly implied that Maul slaughtered all of the kids and proceeded to destroy the entire village. To make his point clear, Maul contacts the Jedi Temple, specifically asking for Obi-Wan to come or more villagers would die. And then Maul decapitates 5 of them on the call for good measure. Of course, Obi-Wan has to go to the planet to do what he can to save whoever's left. But when he gets there, the town is burning. The first thing he sees is an astromech droid scared out of its mind. Bodies everywhere. Buildings in ruins. Then we get this chilling moment when Maul walks out of the flames and Obi-Wan finally realizes who he's up against. That's when Savage comes up behind Kenobi and knocks his saber away. Maul and Savage take their anger out on Obi-Wan, just punching and ragdoll throwing him however they feel like it. This lasts for nearly an hour. Obi-Wan's taken some beatings before, but something about this time feels more hopeless and brutal. Kenobi tries to keep his sense of humor throughout, but by the end you can tell he's starting to lose himself a bit. Thankfully, Ventress shows up just in time to save the day, since she wanted to collect the $1 million bounty on Savage. Even so, the episode sets a dark tone for the upcoming episodes following Maul. If he's willing to go this far just to beat up Obi-Wan for a little bit, imagine what he'd do for something bigger. Throughout Star Wars, we see how the Sith go to extreme lengths to get what they want, and maybe the most shocking reveal of their plans was in our next episode, The Unknown. Things start out just like a normal Clone Wars episode. Anakin and the 501st are on a new campaign at Ringo Vinda alongside 2 other Jedi. The fighting is intense, but all of a sudden there's a quick break in the action, and that's when we notice that something's wrong with Clone Trooper Tup. Tup tells Fives he doesn't feel like himself. And then we get this eerie moment as his fully dilated eyes lock on to Jedi Master Tiplar. It doesn't look like Tup at all. For just a second, he looked like a cold-blooded killer. We all know what's going to happen, we just don't know how or when. And that's what makes this episode so tense and creepy. But Anakin and the clones keep pushing forward, with Fives and Tup supporting the other Jedi. And then Tup freezes again. And of course, he happens to have his gun pointing straight at Master Tiplar. The classic, bone-chilling Clone Wars music starts to play again, as Tup's eyes lock in on the Jedi. It seems like he's in a trance as he says, "Good soldiers follow orders." As a viewer with no concept of inhibitor chips, I was totally scared when I saw this. This is Tup, the young hero of Umbara who captured Pong Krell and a beloved member of the 501st. He would never do something like this. So who's making him do it? The most frightening part of this is when Tup calmly walks up to Master Tiplar, in the middle of a heated battle, mind you, and executes her at point-blank range. As Tup looks down at her body, you can see an insane look of satisfaction that is quickly replaced with confusion. Tup genuinely has no idea what he's done. To me, that's the saddest thing about this episode. But that's not the end of it. Anakin and Rex decide Tup needs to be sent to Kamino so they can figure out what's going on. The thing is, Dooku and Sidious also know what's happening. They can't afford for the Republic to find out the clones have inhibitor chips just because one malfunctioned. So Dooku orders a team of droids to attack the shuttle taking off from Ringo Vinda. That's when we see this horrific scene as this poor clone officer hides in a corner as the other troopers are annihilated by the droids. Imagine being that guy in this moment. The real disturbing part is when Anakin and Rex go to investigate the wreck. Something about seeing the bodies float around in zero gravity, with their expressions frozen on their faces, is just so much more brutal than normal. Even Anakin and Fives, with all of their war experience, look a little shell-shocked here. As a kid, this episode really left an imprint on me. There might be some darker episodes, but because of all of the implications from this episode, I think it deserved to be in this video. If there's an episode that you think deserves to be in this video that I missed, then let me know in the comments. But some episodes are clear picks, like episode 8, Massacre. You might remember this episode from when Grievous essentially commits genocide on the Night Sisters. But what you probably don't remember is the absolutely brutal methods he used to do it, which only adds to the darkness of the show. For starters, the Night Sisters themselves are completely innocent victims here. The only reason Grievous came in the first place is because of Ventress and Talzin. So the fact that an entire innocent population gets wiped out in this episode is terrible. Not only that, but they didn't even know the droids were coming. Grievous immediately orders for a huge bombing run on the Night Sisters' main fortress, which instantly kills innocent Night Sisters like Ventress's friend. Not only that, but he uses weapons like the Defoliator to burn Night Sisters alive and completely destroy the terrain, making it completely uninhabitable. It's not just an attempted genocide, because Grievous wants everything gone. Genocide is one thing, but this episode is also just downright creepy. Mother Talzin decides to use the zombie Night Sister army to help in the battle. Seeing these guys is just extremely unsettling, especially since they don't look all that different from the normal Night Sisters. They might be mindless, but they still seem human. So when Grievous brutally kills them one by one, it's hard to watch. Like in this scene, where he breaks the zombie's neck, throws it to the ground, and finishes it off with his lightsaber. Then there's this other storyline going on, where Mother Talzin is using dark magic to attack Count Dooku using a voodoo doll. Normally, I wouldn't feel bad for Dooku, but the way he just keeps rolling around uncontrollably like he has a demon is super unsettling. When Talzin came out of Dooku's stomach, I felt weirded out. It's like she's projecting herself inside of him to bring him unimaginable pain. The moment where she tapped his head with that needle was especially brutal. It almost makes you pull for Grievous as he races against time to find Talzin and kill her. When he kills the old woman, all of the zombies die, leaving the Night Sisters trapped in a ring of droids. These commando droids stop for a second and then execute the remaining Night Sisters with no second thought. With that, Dooku is free of the spell as he vomits up the green mist. As if this couldn't get any crazier. Between the genocide, brutal war tactics, dark magic, and torture, this episode was pretty dark. But hey, it's all good. It's just a kids show after all, which is why we should show them child abductions. Yeah, that's exactly what happens in episode 7, Padawan Lost. On the surface, this episode might not seem that rough, but it explores a lot of themes that are extremely dark. At first, Anakin, Plo Koon, and Ahsoka are sent to Felucia to capture a separatist base. During the mission, the Jedi split up to attack the base from different directions. Little does Ahsoka know, Trandoshan hunters are sitting in the bushes watching her. The clones leave her side to attack the base, and as soon as they're gone, a Trandoshan knocks her out with a shock net. When Ahsoka wakes up, she's in a cage in a cargo hold. The room is full of cages holding other people who've been kidnapped. Why are the Trandoshans doing this, you might ask? Because they like to hunt people for sport. When they kill someone, they display the bodies as trophies. As soon as they come out of hyperspace, the hunters land on an island and drop off the innocent people. This one guy happily opens fire on the group to scare them into the jungle, taking out a few in the process. That's pretty terrible, but later that day, Ahsoka runs into other former Jedi younglings in the woods. It turns out that the hunters especially love to find Jedi younglings for their hunts. They're strong enough to survive longer than a normal person, but still weak enough to be killed eventually. They might have force powers, but these are children at the end of the day. It's just insane to think about human trafficking at this scale. The younglings can only watch as other people are murdered right in front of them. Ahsoka is shocked, but the others are numb to it. They've seen the same thing play out over and over again. The physical and emotional trauma they've had to endure from surviving and seeing these horrible things has to be unbelievably tough to go through. And the hopelessness of knowing they may never escape. That's what makes this death scene really sad at the end of the episode. One of the younglings is shot while she's running away from the hunters with Ahsoka. It just feels so pointless. And this girl had been there longer than any of them, fighting for her life all that time for nothing. Human trafficking on its own is pretty dark, especially hunting people for sport. But what about human sacrifice? That's exactly what episode 6, The Disappeared Part 1, covers. Jar Jar Binks and Mace Windu are sent to the remote world of Bardada to investigate the disappearance of the planet's spiritual leaders. From the very beginning, Bardada gives off the vibe that something's just wrong. There's something very sinister going on behind the scenes. So Jar Jar goes to have a meeting with the Queen. He's in there for a long time and then steps out to talk to Mace Windu for just a second. And the moment he comes back, she's gone, vanished without a trace. The leaders of Bardada say that the Queen's disappearance is linked to a prophecy about a cult that lives in tunnels deep underground. So now it's Mace and Jar Jar's job to go down and look for her. Using only torches, the two go down into these super dark catacombs, filled with cobwebs and strange writing on the walls. Jar Jar's decision-making was at an all-time high when he decides to leave the group to go down an extra creepy side tunnel, where he finds a piece of the Queen's dress. At that moment, a guy with a scary, cult-like mask pops out at Jar Jar and sprays him with a blue mist, which causes Jar Jar's body to slowly evaporate. So when Mace Windu finally gets to the spot where he heard Jar Jar's screams for help, there's absolutely nothing there. Just like the priest and the Queen, Jar Jar has been abducted and left no trail behind. Of course, the cultists have a super insane underground temple in the middle of a volcano where they've trapped their prisoners in cages above the lava. The prisoners are being held so the cultists can sacrifice them to a demon they worship. Jar Jar can only watch as an innocent Bardatan priest has the literal life force sucked out of him, just for it to be harvested into an orb and fed to the demon. I don't know why, but the idea of human sacrifice and a religion worshipping a demon is just extremely dark to me, especially since cults like this have existed in the real world for thousands of years. At face value, it might seem like just another Clone Wars episode, but this is definitely one of the darkest things the show has covered. Not all dark episodes have to be dark themes though. Other episodes are just extremely emotional and hit really hard. There might be no better example of that than our 5th episode, Orders, the episode that shows the death of Fives. This entire arc is super intense. You can feel that everything in the system is working against Fives, and you know there's no way he can survive for long knowing what he knows. But seeing it all unfold is just heartbreaking. And in one of the first scenes of the episode, we see how the odds are stacked against Fives when the Kaminoan doctor Lawless drugs him right before his big meeting with the Chancellor. To me, this episode has some of the most subtle dark moments. As Palpatine is talking with Fives and Shaak Ti, you can tell he's speaking as Darth Sidious, with the mask of the Chancellor. There's something so ominous about seeing this Sith Lord next to his Red Guards, wearing a kind face, but with his eyes showing everything but kindness. That's why it's so scary when Palpatine asks for everyone to leave the room. As soon as they're gone, he turns to look at Fives, making no effort to hide his true identity. We'll never know what was said behind the closed door at that time, but I think Sidious definitely just gloated to Fives. He told Fives all about the plot, and that he was the Sith Lord, just like he told Anakin in Revenge of the Sith, because he knew he could make Fives suffer with the knowledge that his suspicions had been true, but that there was absolutely no way to prove it. And after doing that, Palpatine put the nail in the coffin for Fives by pretending that Fives attacked him. Now running as a fugitive, Fives decides to get a taxi to go to 79's, the Clone Bar on Coruscant. And this is where one of the other darker themes of this episode comes up. Obviously, it's clear throughout the Clone Wars that the clones were born and bred to fight with no say in what they could do with their lives. But showing the Clone Bar represents this so well. The taxi driver even asks Fives, "You clones know how to have fun?" And they really don't. All the fun they can get out of life are these fleeting, meaningless moments getting drunk at a bar on Coruscant. The clones are human. They know there's more to life than what they've been bred for, but they never get to experience it. But anyway, the end of this episode is what really gets me. Fives gets Anakin and Rex to meet him at this warehouse on Coruscant's lower levels. But a probe droid spots Fives at the location, which gives Commander Fox and his shock troopers time to get over there to arrest him. Fives is trying to tell Anakin everything he knows, but remember, he's tired after days without sleep, drugged, and scared out of his mind after fighting Sidious and running from the Jedi for a few hours. He simply can't tell Anakin everything in time. And that's exactly why he reaches for Rex's pistol instead of giving himself up to the clones, giving Commander Fox the perfect opportunity to carry out Sidious's orders and shoot Fives in the chest. Remember what I said just a second ago about how dark it is that the clones never really get a choice in their lives? That's what makes Fives' death so much more emotional. As he says, "I only wanted to do my duty." And then he says what Tup said when he died on Kamino. The mission, the nightmares, they're finally over. That's what makes me so angry when I see Palpatine in the very next scene faking sadness at the death of Fives, because Sidious got exactly what he wanted. His smugness while talking to the Jedi is just the worst. But I got chills down my spine when he turns to the camera with a full Sidious expression on his face and says, "We can finally put this whole situation behind us. We must focus on the war, because each day brings us closer and closer to victory." Because honestly, what's darker in Star Wars than Order 66 and the rise of the Empire? And it all happened because of this one man who simply wanted to inflict pain on as many people as possible. If you're enjoying the video so far, then definitely leave a like, so I'll know to make more Clone Wars videos just like this one. And moving on to our number 4 episode, we have Slaves of the Republic. As you can probably tell from the title, this episode deals with slavery and how the wealthy exploit people for their own gain. And this is personal for Anakin, given his past. He understands the injustices these slaves suffer firsthand. Not long after Ahsoka and Anakin touch down on the world of Zygeria, they see a slave who is about to be publicly humiliated and whipped in the street because he was too tired to keep carrying his load. Luckily, Ahsoka steps in to stop it from happening, but the implication is clear. This happens on the regular here. Eventually, Anakin and Ahsoka make it to the palace to meet with the Queen, with Anakin posing as a slave trader and Ahsoka pretending to be a slave. Remember, this is supposed to be a kid's show, but the Queen investigates Ahsoka and looks at her bodily features as if she's an object. When Ahsoka gets mad at the Queen notes that Ahsoka will need processing. When a person has a little too much personality, they have to be broken in order to make the ideal slave. Ahsoka, like many other slaves, would probably have to go through tremendous torture in an attempt to strip her of her identity. It might have also included mental torture or even brainwashing. In Star Wars terms, processing meant a memory wipe for a droid. Either way, the Queen talks about this like it's nothing. Just her daily dose of destroying people's lives. The subtle evidence of this is when Obi-Wan gets to talk to a person who's recently been captured by the Zygerians. Since Obi-Wan was wearing a disguise, the prisoner thought Obi-Wan was one of the slavers. He instantly backs into a corner, afraid for his life and begging for mercy. There's clearly countless other prisoners being held in these pits, enduring terrible conditions while waiting to be sold into slavery. But possibly the darkest moment in this episode, and maybe in the entire Clone Wars series, comes in this next scene. Anakin is talking with the Queen on the roof of her palace when a desperate slave comes up from behind and tries to kill the Queen with a kitchen knife. Anakin has to stop her to maintain his cover, but when the Queen says that the slave will need more processing, the slave girl decides that death is the better option than continuing her life in bondage. So she jumps off the roof and commits suicide. Just like that. And the worst thing about it is that Anakin was totally in a position to save her, but he can't. And maybe as a former slave himself, he understands how that slave girl felt. Maybe it is better to die than to live that life. I just have to wonder, what are the Zygerians really doing to make someone make that choice? Just way too dark for the Clone Wars. What that insinuates is just awful. At the end of this episode, we get to see one of the slavers' processing centers when Obi-Wan and Rex are shipped out to be educated. The guy in charge has made it his sole purpose in life to make people suffer, which is why he decides to drop 6 random, completely innocent people down hundreds of feet just to make a point to Kenobi. This is just a truly terrible episode on so many levels. When I rewatched it to make this video, I honestly have no clue how I got through it as a kid. I think a lot of this stuff just went way over my head. With an episode like The Lawless though, the darkness isn't subtle at all. Now that we're in the top 3, these are the darkest episodes in the Clone Wars, and for good reason. The Lawless shows us a very dark time in Mandalore's history. Maul has completed his takeover, and his criminal empire is larger and more powerful than ever. Duchess Satine is in prison, and any of the good people left on Mandalore are being hunted down or oppressed by Maul's rule. Maul secretly allows Satine to send a transmission to the Jedi Council to lure in Obi-Wan, and it works. Since Maul knew Kenobi was coming, his rescue attempt fails miserably, which gives Maul the opportunity to make Obi-Wan suffer yet again. This is when we get what is possibly the single most emotional moment in the entire show, with Satine's brutal execution as Maul impales her on the Darksaber. Watching Obi-Wan lose the love of his life is just heartbreaking. He has every reason to turn to the dark side in this moment, but he doesn't, despite the excruciating pain he's feeling. And Maul is loving every second, sitting there on the throne, smiling as Satine dies in Obi-Wan's arms. What Maul doesn't realize is that he will have to answer for Satine's death. Bo-Katan and her Mandalore loyalists come to rescue Obi-Wan, and we get to see the first battle of the Mandalorian Civil War as shown in this beautiful shot right here. Things like this are why many fans consider this to be the best episode of the entire show, and also because of what happens next. When Sidious hears what's happening, he immediately comes to Mandalore, and from the moment his shuttle touches down, you feel like a monster is about to be unleashed. The genuine terror on Maul and Savage's faces when he walks in the room tells me everything I need to know. To me, this is the best on-screen representation of a Sith truly showing off their power. Sidious completely dog-walks Maul and Savage. He's just toying with them. The dark side has never been stronger. Finally, after a few minutes of fighting, Sidious eliminates Savage in what's an oddly sad death. Savage is a terrible person, but he was never really himself after he went through the Night Sister rituals that made him who he is. You can't help but feel bad for him, and that his life was completely wasted. Then Sidious finishes the job with Maul too. He just casually throws Maul around like a rag doll until Maul is all but dead. Seeing Maul, a truly evil character, beg for mercy in this moment is really hard to watch. For all of his faults, this guy has really been a victim of Sidious's plans. His entire life's purpose was dedicated to serving Palpatine, who I imagine was something of a father figure to him. For Maul to hear Sidious casually say, "You're nothing to me, you've been replaced," has to be soul-crushing. Honestly, Maul is just a completely broken and mentally ill individual, and he knows what's coming. The episode ends with Palpatine relentlessly shocking Maul with Force lightning. And keep in mind, the entire lower half of Maul's body is made of metal, so I can only imagine the pain he's going through. His screams echoing across the room at the end of the episode is haunting. It doesn't get much more emotional than that. Except for our number 2 episode, Victory and Death, the Clone Wars finale. There's something that's just so tragic about the inevitability of Order 66. From Revenge of the Sith to the Clone Wars, it really is one of the darkest moments of the saga. On top of that, there's the inevitable disaster of the Republic cruiser crashing into a nearby planet as Ahsoka and Rex race against time to escape. And all of these clones who used to be in the 501st. Troopers who loved Ahsoka enough to wear new helmets with a design in her honor have no fear of the impending crash. They only have one focus, and that's to kill Ahsoka at all costs. That's exactly what Captain Rex is having to deal with as he talks to Ahsoka. They come up with a plan and walk out of their hiding spot to try to reason with Jesse. But clearly, this isn't the Jesse they once knew. With their minds made up, Ahsoka and Rex make their escape as the ship falls into the atmosphere. Later, they make their way back to the crash site. Seeing the wreckage of the Venator gave me chills, knowing all of those men we came to know and love and the 501st are gone. All while the Victory and Death music plays in the background. But what was truly moving was seeing Rex cry as he watched Ahsoka look over the burial area they'd made to honor his fallen brothers. The real brothers that he'd fought with for all those years. Now they've died with the Republic. The grief that he must have been feeling here is just insane. And then Vader shows up. He finds Ahsoka's lightsaber and picks it up. You can't help but wonder what he's thinking at this moment. What's left of Anakin is probably filled with grief, memories, and emotions. But then that's replaced with the hate for the loss of Padme, his old life, and everything he once loved. And we get this powerful image as he looks at the cracked clone trooper helmet, just barely peeking up out of the snow. The image of Ahsoka is fading, and it's nearly completely buried by the snow. Anakin, Ahsoka, the clones, and the Republic are all but forgotten now. Just bygones of a past era. And all that's left is the reflection of Vader, the new embodiment of darkness. It's such a hopeless ending. Even Revenge of the Sith gave us that beautiful ending scene with baby Luke Skywalker on Tatooine. But with this, it's just total darkness. And that leaves us with just one more episode. This is the darkest episode of the entire Clone Wars, and that's Carnage of Krell. The entire Umbara arc is extremely dark, both literally and metaphorically, but this episode hits harder in a much different way than the others. Jedi General Pong Krell receives a transmission from a trooper in the 212th Battalion, saying that Umbarans have ambushed them and stole their weapons and armor. So Krell orders the 501st to march towards the capital, and to expect an attack from Umbarans disguised as clones. All of a sudden, the 501st is caught by surprise as a clearing lights up with blaster fire and mortar shells. The fighting is intense, with clones going down everywhere, and then Rex notices a body with its head exposed. They haven't been fighting Umbarans. These are clones. Rex immediately puts his life on the line by taking off his helmet and running straight into the middle of the battle to try and stop the fighting. Finally, both sides realize what's going on, and the 501st and the 212th come together with bodies piled all around them. Rex manages to find Waxer, the 212th's platoon leader. Remember, this is Waxer, the clone who saved the Twi'lek girl Numa on Ryloth all the way back in Season 1. Unlike his partner, Boyle, Waxer was so compassionate with Numa that she called him Nira, or brother. That was a super emotional moment for me in Season 1. But here we are with Waxer breathing his last. An amazing soldier and human. dying for nothing. As his life fades, he tells Rex that it was General Krell who sent the 212th to this exact place, under the same orders he'd given to Rex. It absolutely destroyed me when Waxer cried as he breathed his last. He knew that so many clones had died needlessly because of bad orders, but he'd never know that Krell had done it intentionally. But Rex does. He gets all of his men together to arrest Krell, and they surround him in the tower of the base. Per usual, Krell just insults the clones. Clearly, he thinks of them as less than human. They're expendable. They're like droids. When the clones open fire, the carnage ensues. See what I did there? We really never see a Jedi's full power on display in Star Wars, let alone a guy with 4 arms and 2 double-bladed lightsabers. But in just the first few seconds of the fight, he brutally chops, cuts, and maims nearly a dozen clones. As the battle continues out into the Umbari forest, Krell seems to get more and more creative with the different ways he butchers the clones, smiling and laughing the entire time. I guess he got bored of lightsabers after a bit, because then General Krell decided to just go to hand-to-hand combat. The most gruesome moment is when he picks up this one clone over his head and breaks the clone's spine on his knee. Then Tup gets the idea to lure Krell towards this creature that reminds me of the Sarlacc. The clones all turn and run, and Krell, in his overconfidence, runs straight into the trap. The creature grabs the general, and the clones are finally able to stun him. Afterwards, when Rex questions him, we get to see the truly sadistic side of Krell. Rex asks why he needlessly murdered so many clones. Krell's response? Because I can. He truly saw the clones as inferior beings, as if they were droid. The clones decide they have no choice but to execute him. At the end of the episode, Rex asks Fives, what's the point of all of this? To me, that's the darkest part of this episode. All of those men, and eventually General Krell himself, died for nothing. And all the survivors are left with are the memories and trauma they'll carry with themselves forever. And that's the 10 darkest episodes of the Clone Wars.